You know how people say absolute power corrupts absolutely? Yeah, turns out that wasn't a metaphor. That was a spoiler alert for what happens when you hand the keys to the Roman Empire to men who clearly failed the vibe check. Take Caligula. This guy didn't just go off the rails. He launched the train into the sun. He made his horse a priest. That's not a joke. That's history. We're diving into 9 Roman emperors who straight up lost their minds. Publicly, spectacularly, and in ways that would make your weird uncle at Thanksgiving look like a Buddhist monk. This is Shocking Historical Facts, the Roman Emperor edition, or as I like to call it, this is your brain on unchecked power. Let's dive into the imperial dumpster fire. First up, Caligula, aka the human middle finger to logic. Gaius Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, but let's just stick with Caligula, because that's easier to scream when you're horrified. Caligula started his reign as the golden boy, young, charismatic, everyone's favorite traumatized war baby. Then he got a fever, nearly died, and when he recovered, it was like someone installed malware in his brain. His hobbies included torturing people for fun, making senators run alongside his chariot like groupies at a Metallica concert, and of course, trying to declare war on the ocean. Yes, the ocean! He marched his troops to the shore, had them stab at waves, and then collected seashells as spoils of war. Honestly, SpongeBob would have made a better military advisor. Oh, and his horse, Incitatus, not only got a marble stable, ivory feed buckets, in his own house, but Caligula also made him a priest. There are rumors he was planning to make the horse a consul. That's the Roman equivalent of putting a labradoodle on the Supreme Court. He lasted 4 years. Then the Senate, the Praetorian Guard, and probably half the waitstaff at his palace got together and Julius Caesared him in a hallway, a group stabbing, because even in death, Caligula had to be extra. Moving on, Nero, the OG pyro influencer. Nero didn't just fiddle while Rome burned. He allegedly wrote a song about it and performed it in costume. For context, a third of the city was on fire, and Nero's reaction was, "Let me hit you with my latest single." But the man wasn't content just being a drama queen. He had to be a Broadway drama queen. He forced people to attend his poetry readings that lasted for hours. Roman historians say some people literally faked their own deaths to get out of listening. Imagine being so boring. People prefer dying over hearing your spoken word piece. His wife, he kicked her to death. Then he missed her so much he found a teenage boy who looked like her, had him castrated, and married him instead. Which, there are so many layers of therapy needed here. I can't even count. Eventually, he got declared a public enemy. His response? He fled, begged someone to stab him, then chickened out and had to stab himself with help. His last words? "What an artist dies in me." Dude, no one came for your SoundCloud link. And now, let's talk about Commodus, aka the emperor who thought he was a gladiator. So you've seen Gladiator, right? The creepy emperor with a sister complex? That's Commodus, but the real guy was somehow worse. He believed he was literally Hercules reborn, not metaphorically, not as a nickname. He commissioned hundreds of statues of himself wearing lion skins and holding clubs. Dude was cosplaying 24/7. It was like Comic-Con, but state-sponsored and terrifying. He made the Senate call him Hercules, conqueror of the world, which is a bold rebrand for a man who spent most of his time oiled up, fighting people in the Colosseum. Oh, and by fighting, I mean slaughtering disabled people and amputees, dressed up as monsters. It was less of a fight and more of a government-funded murder circus. Eventually, his mistress and his wrestling coach poisoned him. When that didn't work fast enough, they had a gladiator strangle him in the bath. Honestly, the only shocking part is that it took 12 years for someone to do it. Let's crank the crazy up a notch with Elagabalus, emperor by age 14, Chaos Goblin by instinct. This guy was less emperor and more drag performer with a treasury. He rose to power by pretending to be the illegitimate heir of the previous emperor and got plopped onto the throne by his grandmother, who was basically a Roman Kris Jenner. Elagabalus was obsessed with a sun god called Elagabal, so much so he made Rome worship a literal black meteorite as their new supreme deity. He built a temple, held orgies inside it, and made senators watch, which, imagine being a 60-year-old politician in robes, forced to sit through your emperor's cosmic sex cult party. That's not retirement, that's hell. He'd marry men, women, and everyone in between, and he didn't just cross-dress, he demanded to be called empress. He tried to get gender reassignment surgery in the 2nd century. That's honestly ahead of its time, but maybe don't combine it with ritual sacrifices and public nudity. His reign was so exhausting, even his own grandma had him and his mom killed. Their bodies were dumped in the Tiber River like expired leftovers. When grandma throws you in the river, you know you messed up. Time for a guy who made taxes weird, Caracalla. Emperor, murder enthusiast, and tax policy nightmare. Caracalla had what historians call trust issues, and what normal people call a murder addiction. He became emperor by stabbing his own brother in their mother's arms. That's not just cold, that's refrigerated. Then he decided to grant Roman citizenship to every free man in the empire. Sounds noble, right? Nope, he just wanted to tax more people. Classic bait and switch. Caracalla thought he was the second coming of Alexander the Great. So naturally, he had a massive statue of himself built, launched pointless wars, and forced soldiers to call him Alexander. It's like changing your name to LeBron and expecting to dunk. Eventually, a soldier got tired of his nonsense and stabbed him while he was peeing on the side of the road. Yep, the man who thought he was Alexander the Great died taking a leak. History doesn't do subtle irony. It drop kicks you with it. Let's shift gears to Tiberius, a guy who looked at the concept of retirement and said, yeah, but what if it's on a haunted sex island? Tiberius started off fine, kind of stoic, kind of paranoid, basically your weird stepdad with a sword. But once he got bored of actually running the empire, he moved to the island of Capri and went full Howard Hughes with less hand-washing and more child abuse. According to Roman historians, who, let's be honest, loved the drama, Tiberius built a literal pleasure palace filled with mirrors, fountains, and teenage boys trained in erotic gymnastics. The whole place operated like a state-funded OnlyFans, except no one was consenting and everyone was traumatized. And if anyone displeased him, off a cliff you go. Capri had cliffs, and Tiberius had moods. Not a great combo. One visitor called it the Island of Eternal Perversion, which sounds like a bad Netflix show and an even worse travel brochure. Eventually, he died in bed. Peacefully, boring. Except when a servant came in and realized he was still breathing, the guards allegedly smothered him with a pillow anyway, because at that point, everyone was so done with his Capri nonsense. Now let's throw Diocletian into the madness stew. Not as flamboyantly insane, but trust me, this guy turned quitting into a national crisis. Diocletian came in strong, stabilized the empire, fixed the currency, divided the empire into east and west so things could run smoother. All good, solid management, and then he just resigned. Retired, voluntarily, like he was punching out of a 9-to-5. This was Rome, not a midlife career pivot. People were so confused they begged him to come back. His response? If you saw the cabbages I'm growing, you'd stop asking. That's a real quote. The man ditched global power to garden. But just to keep things spicy, he also launched one of the worst persecutions of Christians in Roman history. Burned books, destroyed churches, tortured bishops, then pieced out to play in his dirt like nothing happened. The legacy? Half the empire collapsed within 20 years. But hey, those cabbages? Thriving. Ready for a speed round? Because this next guy didn't even last a full year. Say hello to Vitellius, emperor, glutton, and walking cholesterol problem. Vitellius loved food the way frat bros love beer pong. Loudly, excessively, and with zero dignity. He once hosted a banquet with 2,000 dishes. Not guests, dishes. That's not dinner, that's a grocery store raid. His favorite meal? A stew made of pheasant brains, peacock tongues, flamingo thighs, and moray eel livers. It cost the equivalent of millions, and he ate it while Rome's economy was doing the historical version of a house fire. But he wasn't just a food guy, he was also a coward. When another general came for the throne, Vitellius tried to resign again and again. The Senate was like, bro, no takebacks. So what did he do? He hid in the palace, then disguised himself as a servant, then tried to escape out the back. It didn't work. He was dragged through the streets, beheaded, and tossed in the Tiber. Apparently that river had a subscription plan for discarded emperors. Let's take a quick breath before we introduce the human migraine that was Maximinus Thrax. Emperor? Yes. Human skyscraper? Also yes. Maximinus was a literal giant, 7 feet tall, allegedly drank whole barrels of wine, and ate 40 pounds of meat a day. That's not an emperor. That's a Roman boss fight. He came from humble beginnings as a Thracian shepherd, then joined the army, punched his way up the ranks, probably literally, and eventually took power. Except the Senate hated him. Why? Because he was a peasant with biceps the size of provinces. So what did Maximinus do? Oh, you know, triple taxes, slaughtered entire cities who resisted him, and lived in a military tent like a rage-fueled camping trip from hell. Eventually, the Roman army sank. His own troops mutinied and chopped off his head and his sons. They carried the heads back to Rome like it was bring your empire to work day. Moral of the story, don't start your empire arc on leg day. Last, but not even remotely least, Carus, emperor by lightning, death by also lightning. Carus came into power by marching on the previous emperor and, surprise surprise, having him assassinated. But Carus had big plans. He wanted to conquer the East, reclaim Persia, and die in mysterious fashion. Which he did, because while he was out in Mesopotamia during a storm inside his tent, Carus was struck by lightning, dead, on the spot. The official story was divine punishment, but let's be real, maybe don't hang out in a metal tent during a thunderstorm if you just declared war on half of Asia, or maybe the whole lightning thing was a cover story for an internal assassination. Either way, the man turned into toast faster than you can say bad weather strategy. And there you have it, 9 emperors, 9 full-blown collapses of sanity. We went from let's stab the ocean to let's become Hercules to let's quit and grow vegetables. If you're wondering why the Roman Empire fell, here's your answer. It wasn't the barbarians. It was the absolute circus of ego, insanity, and edible birds. Remember, these were the most powerful men in the world, and they used that power for horse promotions, gladiator LARPing, and multi-meat casseroles. So next time you hear someone say, back in the good old days, just send them this video, trust me. Smash that like button if you now feel emotionally exhausted by ancient Rome. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's weirdest human disasters. And drop a comment below, which of these emperors would you absolutely not want at your dinner party? Because let's face it, if Caligula shows up, the horse is probably the most normal guest.